Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LeanTossup Esports Call of Duty podcast. I am here with my co-host CDLMetrics. We're here to talk about Major Five Week One qualifiers. This is it. This is the last 3 weeks of the regular-ish season. I guess we could call it a regular season. Um, this year's ending a lot sooner than we thought it was going to be, but it's ending. It's ending the same amount of games, but you wish it was longer. You wish there was maybe a sixth major in there, but apparently the CDL decided that it was decided somewhere that there can only be five majors. So here we sit at the end of the regular season. Here, what are your thoughts on that? Uh, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So it does feel weird to be here in early May talking about the end of the year already, but here we are. Um, yeah, I don't mind that Champs is coming earlier this year. A sixth major would be fun, but at this point, it's like we know what teams are the best teams. We know what teams should be at Champs. So let's get there already. I'm part of me wants a longer season, but part of me is like, let's just do this thing. But we have one more major to get through here. Um, I'd say the biggest storyline, obviously, going into the Major Five qualifiers is the battle for the eighth seed. Um, which in years past, they're always, it's a toss up. If some years there is a battle for the eighth seed, some years there's not. This year there is. Rocker, my team, who I love to fade whenever I can, had a surprising major four. They ended up top six, I believe. Got themselves 20 CDL points, and Vegas Legion got none. And those are the two teams right now really battling out for that 8-9 seed. I suppose Boston Breach could slip down into that, but really the talk here is Minnesota versus Vegas for that last spot. I do think most people are going to want Vegas in there just because, right, Clayster's on the team, Champs is in Vegas, and Legion have just been notorious for being a bad franchise since the CDL's been around. So it'd be kind of fun to have them at Champs. So I get that. I'm kind of split as a Rocker fan. I obviously want them to qualify for Champs, but as a CDL fan and a Clayster fan, like it would be fun if Vegas was there too. But yeah, outside of that, like I'd say the other, six, even seven teams that are ahead of those two are pretty well established. That they'll make champs. Obviously, weird things can happen, but uh, yeah, Florida, LAG, London. I don't know. I think it's curtains for them at this point. Um, but we do have some fun Florida Mutineers news to share if you want to jump into that, Robert.
Yeah, so this actually came out just earlier today. We're recording this on Tuesday. The Florida Mutineers at the end of the season will no longer be the Florida Mutineers. They will be the Miami Heretics, which is actually kind of cool because there is a relatively large Hispanic community in Miami. So it's not like perfect, but it's not bad either. But yeah, no, the Florida Mutineers, and as we expected, right? Because they were owned by Misfits Gaming. Misfits Gaming got out of the League of Legends in Europe, and now they seem to be getting out of the COD League or kind of merging with Heretics. So yeah, that's a very interesting thing. And again, we kind of speculated on a couple of teams that could be out of the CDL this year. Definitely don't think we're getting expansion this year, especially because we still don't
Nope.
even have a buyer for LAG. Um, but this was a team that we didn't even know was going to go on the market. It's already been sold and replaced. So yeah, yeah, this is going to be an interesting next couple of months. Um,
Yeah, for sure. And just to speak on that briefly, it's just good to see that an outside organization is coming in to invest in the league. Um, obviously the LAG news halfway through the year was a little concerning to hear. And they're still obviously waiting for a suitor to, take over the team or whatever the case may be with them. But yeah, it's good to see that that organization is coming in to merge with Florida. I have also seen that Rocker are like have been rumored to be in talks that they want to merge with another organization, which I thought was interesting. It must just be a cash flow situation with them, for how well Rocker has been as an org, which has been not so well lately. they do shell out cash. Like they hosted a major last year. They've had these home series events, well, a couple months ago, and now this weekend they'll have another one. They put on watch parties for their fans, so they're really trying to grow a fan base in the Midwest. But just seeing that they might want to merge with somebody just is a good indicator that they just need some extra cash, it seems like. So we'll see if that ends up happening. I'll be interested in that moving forward into the off season. Um, but yeah, some interesting rebranding news for next year. So goodbye to the Mutineers, I guess. I think it's kind of sad to see them go. I do like the branding and the logo of it all, but seeing something fresh, I think is good for the league too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, yeah, I am sad to see the Mutineers team go away. They had one of the best logos, some of the best team kits, but at the same time, we have to value financial stability of the league over a really cool logo. So maybe one day we will see the Mutineers return. Maybe they'll be called the Kraken or something. Who knows? We will see them. I'm sure we will when the league is like 30 teams. We might see them that return. So we'll have to see. But for now, I think they are fine as they are with Miami Heretics. Also, the other roster news is Vivid is now back in place of
Nero.
Nero. Yeah, which is weird. Nero has been the one player because like Boston's actually had a number of team changes since its inception in the league. Nero's
Hmm.
been one that's been kind of immune to those. He's survived all of them, and now he's finally sitting on the bench there. So it's fascinating what they're trying to do, what they're trying to go for. So we'll have to see how that one plays out in the upcoming weeks. So couple of future markets here. There are on Bet365, as we usually talk about, there are markets for the major. Um, there are your standard qualifier wins. A lot of them kind of suck. The only ones I really like is Optic over 3.5. I have Optics wins at 4.49, so that's not horrible. Um, I don't like Toronto over 3.5 because they have to play Optic and Thieves, and they need to win one of those to get over the 3.5. So I'm not a fan of that. Thieves, for some reason, their total is set at over 2.5 minus 225, of which they have to beat one of. They basically get to play London, Minnesota, and Florida. And then they also play New York and Toronto. So I kind of like that one, but it is minus 225. So lay it at your own peril. Las Vegas does not have a fun schedule at all. You can maybe even bet the under minus 1.5 on that one. London, it's just not worth it. What are you doing? If you're seeing value in London over 2.5 at plus 162, seek help.
Yeah,
Um,
no thanks. Like that London, just looking at London's schedule, like you can see the path for them to get to 3 wins, but like you really got to squint. They play Rocker, they play LA Gorillas, and they play Florida Mutineers. So those are the 3 cuz the other 2 are FaZe and Thieves. So those are losses. So yeah, I just with London and LAG, and this is all I'll speak on these win totals because I think for the most part they're pretty accurate. Um, yeah, London and LAG. I mean, yeah, it like they're at the bottom for a reason. They're pretty bad, and we're at the point in the year where it's pretty well known that they won't be qualifying for champs. They're not mathematically eliminated, I don't think, but they're not making champs. So we'll see what the roster can do, and maybe they perform better because there's no, expectation of them, or like they're playing with house money, as some people would say. So maybe they can get over that, but um yeah, the unders on them make some sense maybe. And then yeah, like you said, your optic number is way above what's listed, so that makes some sense maybe. You really, yeah, just have FaZe and Toronto that you have to get through. Seattle could maybe give them some trouble, but really it comes down to winning one of those two versus FaZe or Ultra. So yeah, I don't hate what you recommended there, and um, yeah, it's Vegas's path moving forward, man, is just so tough. That rocker game is going to be absolutely crucial for them, but TBD if they're actually going to win that. So
Mhm. Now there is also markets to qualify for winners bracket, which I was initially very excited about. But and this is how you figure out betting. This is just a very quick lesson for people who are betting. When you look at the qualifier for winners brackets, the price starts at phase minus 2,000, all the way down to London Royal Ravens minus 120, and that's the top nine things. So if you can't even bet on a member of the top, like basically there's nine teams that are favored, you're having to lay money on to make it to winners bracket. That's not good value. But even then, the three teams that are not favorites, Florida plus 120, yuck. Las Vegas plus 150 and LAG plus like if LAG was like plus 1,000, maybe I'd take a shot at it, but it's not. It's plus 175. Like there are so many, like you could. There's, I guarantee you'll have a better shot at betting an LAG money line to get to winners bracket than that. Like that's nuts. I cannot. That's some of the worst value I've ever seen in my entire life. Now I get it with proper probabilities and stuff. It makes sense and that's fine. And I think they're basically baking in like, oh, if this team is overperforms what people think they will, then of course they have to adjust prices based on that, and that's fine. But it's not really great there. Next up, to qualify for as number one seed, actually I hadn't thought of this. So basically, Phase plus 200. I don't think Phase is the best team. I only have Phase as 3.38 wins. I think Ultra plus 275. I also don't like Ultra this stage. I think Optic plus 350 or Thieves plus 400 is a much better pick. But that being said, though, every single time I pick qualify as number one seed, something stupid happens. And
yeah,
then
it's
because the thing of it
with
is,
how
there's
many tiebreakers there are, like, I just stay
it's not
away
worth
from
it.
that, or maybe move down the board. If you have a cluster of teams that you're pretty close on, maybe just take the last of them and be like, "All right, they have the highest odds. Can they get a tiebreaker to go their way?" Maybe, but your like your rooting interest is very hard to figure out as you get further on in the stage. Obviously, you want your team to win, but then you need this match to go map 5 and you need this to be a sweep, and it gets very convoluted very quickly.
And you don't even know until like the last day. You're like, I need this to go to map 5, and like it's just the
Right.
problem is, again, this isn't like the NFL where there's a decided advantage to being number one seed, right? Because if you're in the NFL, you're the number one seed, you have a bye and you have home field advantage until the Super Bowl. Here, it's like, well, there's functionally no difference between the number one and the number two seed. It matters who you're playing. But to be
Yeah.
honest, playing the seventh versus eighth seed, to be honest, based on how the tiebreakers work, the seventh seed could actually be a softer team, anyways. Like that's literally like it doesn't matter. Like if you're number, like there's no impetus for these teams to be like, oh, we gotta win this game to get the number one seed, because it honestly doesn't matter. So yeah, there's that. So now one other futures market we actually have some championship odds. You pointed this one out to me. One of the funny ones is that so the top eight teams is rounded out by Minnesota Rocker at 25 to 1. They're the eighth most likely team to win champs. The ninth is Las Vegas Legion at 250 to 1. So Rocker's 25 to 1, Legion is 251. So they just added another whole zero to the
Yeah.
price, which is nuts, by the way. That's not how pricing is supposed to work. Now I get it because of the schedule and stuff, and like that's fine. But like that's just hilarious that it's just like they're just like they've decided these eight teams are making champs, and like that's it. Those are the teams that are making champs, and basically no one else is making champs. Of the teams making champs, you got Thieves at plus 250, which is weird that they're not the number one seed for the for the number one seed for Major Five, but whatever. Optic plus 300, Phase plus 333, Ultra plus 350, Subliners plus 700, Surge 8 to 1, Breach 20 to 1, and then Rocker obviously 25 to 1. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of. I mean, I kind of like Thieves. I maybe would like Ultra. I'm not a fan of Phase, but yeah, it's whatever. I think Ultra. If I was to bet one on here, I'd say Ultra, but I know you probably. I think you have your own pick as to which one you'd like on that board, right?
Yeah, yeah, the one that jumped out to me is Phase at I see plus 325, but really anything past plus 300 to me is a little intriguing. Just considering where they're at in the points table right now and my overarching belief with that team that despite, not even finishing top 2 at the last 2 majors, I still do think they are the best team in COD. They have been for like 3 years now. You could argue 4 years. If you go back to the first year of the CDL where they didn't win champs but still were great. Um, yeah, like they just are automatic top 3 finishers at every event. You know they're gonna be there in the end. It's just a matter of can they beat, these elite teams and can they win hard points? That's been their bugaboo all year. But not only that, they do have a pretty solid hold on the 1 seed for champs right now. They have a 25-point lead over Optic Texas and a 40-point lead over LA Thieves. So, I mean, super, super likely you get the top seed with that kind of a buffer. And I do think that matters this year. I do see whoever the 8 seed is, probably Rocker, maybe Legion. I guess Breach could fall down to 8, but very, very likely it's going to be Rocker or Legion in that spot. Um, I do think there's a significant gap between those two teams and the rest of that like contenders tier that I always talk about. Like I do think Breach is a step up from those teams. I do think Surge is New York and so on. So the 1 seed just has a little extra comfort, in my opinion, this year than the 2 seed. I still think whoever the 2 seed is gonna win their opening round matchup pretty easily. But right, if it's Breach in that 7 seed or maybe Surge or who knows, it's very likely one of those teams. Like to me, those teams could cause more chaos than a Rocker or a Legion. So I like Atlanta to hold their spot at the number 1. Even if they, finish third at the major again, um, like unless Optic go 5-0 and win the major or something like that, like it's really hard to see FaZe getting past at this point. So I like FaZe. Yeah, I think this is one of the lowest points you can buy them all season, just because we've seen now 2 majors in a row where they haven't been in the champs or in the finals game. So um, yeah, that's my thought with that. Otherwise, Breach at 20-1, like maybe you could talk me into that. Um, and then otherwise, like New York, we've seen win a major this year. They're down to 7-1 though. They're probably going to be in that like 4-5 game right now. That's where they're slated, uh, which looks like a date with Toronto Ultra. So maybe I don't love that, but yeah, I don't know. TBD on a lot of these teams here. I just and yeah, you brought it up. The Las Vegas Legion number is a little ridiculous. Like, I don't know if I maybe should take that 250-1 because like it's unlikely they make champs with a 20-point deficit to Rocker and a brutal schedule. But, crazier things have happened. Could they go 2-3 in the qualifiers, get an 8 seed or a 7 seed and have a nice path to a top 3 finish? Like maybe that's not crazy to think about. The problem then comes in with like, okay, well now you're going to run into FaZe in your first game or Optic. So that's where it gets tough. But yeah, it's a little steep there. I would maybe adjust that if I was the book, but um, just interesting to see that the book is that convinced that Legion really won't be there, even though they're only 20 points back right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's egregious, but it's slightly tempting for me, but I still don't know if I want to. I'll sleep on it. I don't know. I mean, $10. But the thing is, again, though, it's winning champs, right? It's not just making champs, right?
Yeah,
And like, okay, cool. If they make champs, then they great. You have a plus. You have a 250-1 on a team that's not particularly good. That's like just an average team to win champs. Well, great. That's awesome. That sounds awesome. Sign me up for
but
that.
they're the hometown team if they make it. So, the Rams won the Super Bowl in their own building and the Bucks won the Super Bowl in their own building. Could Legion win champs in Las Vegas? Although I
That's
suppose the trend on that did break last year because the Cardinals did not win the Super Bowl. So
Well, yeah,
yeah,
they didn't even get close to
right.
making the playoffs. The thing is, though, it's funny because when you say Vegas, and like, yeah, there'll be a lot of Vegas fans, but there's probably gonna be a lot of LA Thieves fans because they're gonna like
True.
because there's a lot of traveling. If you live in LA, you can get to Vegas in just a couple hours, right? And you can be like, cool, we're gonna go cheer on Thieves and do some gambling. People are like, that sounds great. So yeah. So, anyways, it's time to talk about this week's games here. So, first up, Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock. FaZe versus LAG. FaZe minus 2.5, minus 155. LAG plus 2.5, plus 120. FaZe a staggering minus 3,300 on the money line. LAG plus 1,100, over 3.5 plus 120. So, I mean, it's kind of deserved,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's a bit excessive. Like, I mean, LAG could
Yeah.
win, but see, the problem is like LAG could win a map. Like, I've got the hard point is about a 55 point. You're giving me 49.5. That's tenable. I can live with that. If you like you could bet a hard point spread. You're giving me 2.5 in the search and destroy. Wow, that's crazy. Like, but at the same time, it's LA. Like, I think I, the minus 2.5 at minus 155 is literally unbettable. Like, you literally can't. That's a crime to bet that number. It's not worth
Yeah.
it. But you could maybe put some a little bit on the plus 2.5, and then maybe put something on a hard point spread. Because like again, FaZe is not particularly good at hard point. Like this is a bit unearned here on this hard point number, and like maybe it's earned for search and destroy, but definitely not control. Definitely not hard point. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. I actually think LAG plus 2.5 makes a lot of sense. And I was shocked when I punched in the numbers for this game because I was like, okay, my model's gonna say there's no value anywhere because it's such a lopsided affair. But I actually see LAG covering to like not getting swept 52% of the time. So
I have
that
actually. I'll
number,
just I'll just jump in. I have
yeah.
63%, 62.9. No.
Okay, wow. Yeah, even more confident. So yeah, the number on LAG plus 2.5 should be more like even money, if not minus 110 or something in that range. So plus 120 looks good. The one other thing I'll say with these kind of matches is that dominant team might switch up their map pool a little bit just to get some live reps against a CDL team on some maps that they're bad at, just to see if there's anything there. Um, Now, granted, LAG don't have a lot of maps that you would be scared to play them on, but if FaZe are playing maps that like they don't have a lot of confidence on to begin with, or maybe like a control on Expo, which FaZe is 0-2 on so far. LAG has yet to play that, so that's still kind of a map we don't really know about. Like, could I see FaZe losing that control? Maybe. And yeah, we've already talked about FaZe's struggle in hardpoint this year. They have one map where they have an above 500 record on. That's Embassy. So maybe they just let that map go and they try to get a win or two on some of these other hardpoint maps. And if that's the case, it opens the door a little bit for LAG, enough to I think avoid a sweep. So I don't love it, but the value here is on LAG, um, just to cover, not to win outright. 11-1 is still not enough for me. I've got LAG winning the series 7% of the time. So yeah, 11-1 doesn't quite get there for me. But yeah, to cover, to not get swept, like I think, can do it. It's terrifying, but like, why not cheer for an underdog every now and then, especially a crazy big underdog like LAG? So yeah, give me LAG. Also, our city's revenge game, so there's
Yeah,
that to look
our
into.
city's revenge game. The thing of it is, it's just like when you're getting like plus 2.5 at plus money, it's just like will this professional CDL team not be swept at plus money? And you're like, okay, right? Like these are pros against other pros, right? So, and the thing of it is, we talked about London. We're like, at some point, this team's going to bounce back. They did bounce back a little bit, then they got crushed. But this LAG team has kind of shown some resolve in some games. This in the major, but like they haven't had that bounce back game of like, yes, we are not completely dead, because they are actually completely dead. Like there is no hope for them to make champs, and their org doesn't exist anymore, and I'm not even sure if they're getting paychecks anymore. But it's pretty bleak. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, one last point on this. LAG did play Atlanta FaZe. I should say LAG Academy played Atlanta FaZe very early in the season. That went to a game 5. I believe LAG did win a hard point on Embassy. So even if FaZe don't like self veto that map for them. Like we've seen this team, this core beat FaZe on that map on land too. So like yeah, there's evidence to show that LAG could make this interesting. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. And again, at some point, there's going to be their last stand where they'll be like, we are going to go out with a bang, and the bang might be, we we do not get swept by face. That might be their bang. And the thing of it is, if that is their bang, then do you really want to be betting minus 155 on them not getting on them to get swept? Like
Nope.
that's too excessive. All right, second match on Friday: Legion versus Optic. Legion plus 2.5 minus 210. That's an appropriate not to get swept price. Optic 2 sweep, though, plus 160. That's actually pretty attractive, though. Legion plus 395 on the money line. Optic minus 700. Over 3.5 minus 200. Um, yeah, I actually have an Optic 3.0 here. I actually there's a lot of I have Optic as a 47%, 46.9, 47% chance to sweep them here as a plus 160. That's actually pretty good value. So I'm taking that side of this. Sorry, I got hiccups here. Um, this Optic team is just really good. Aside from when they play other teams in grand finals, but other than that,
Yeah.
they're really good, and they're dominant in hardpoint. I mean, Thieves was just really good, and I don't expect Optic to let off here. They're just gonna steamroll this Legion team, and yeah, like why are we getting plus 135 for Optic minus 1.5 map two? That seems insane. Um, yeah, there seems to be some value on this piece in this game. What do you think?
Um I don't completely disagree, but the one thing I would be wary of is Legion and Search and Destroy. It's been pretty good all year for like they're still the number 2 search team according to my numbers. So, map 2 very close. It's basically a toss up between them and Optic in my opinion. Um and I think that's enough for me to shy away from the plus 160, just knowing that Vegas has that game mode in their back pocket. Their hard points pretty rough. Their control is atrocious. Um, but Search, could they win map two? I think absolutely, especially if it's their map pick, which, we'll see if it is or not. But any way you go about it, I think Search and Destroy will be competitive. So to me, that's enough to shy away from it. But yeah, I mean, right now my numbers say Texas has a 71% chance to win a hard point on any given map versus Vegas, and I just don't think that's high enough. Like just watching this team play the last 2 months in that game mode, like it's hard to imagine them losing a hard point until it happens. Like they run into Thieves, they start losing hard points. Or at Major 3, right, they get to the grand finals against Toronto and they actually lost both hard points. And it was like, whoa, that's a shock. So they are beatable in that game mode, but is Vegas the team that's going to take them out on that? I don't think so. And yeah, like I said, their control is just atrocious. I was hoping for Vegas that the new control map would help them a little bit, but it really doesn't seem to have changed the meta that much for them or for many teams at all. So yeah, it to me it feels more like a Texas 3-1, but you're right. I mean, the way this team is playing right now would not shock me at all if it's a 3-0. But just be wary that that plus 160 on the minus 2.5 could go away in a map 2 win for Legion. But outside of that, I mean, yeah, this Texas team, just get out of their way because they're, you could argue, one of the hottest teams in the CDL right now.
Yeah. Um, so next up, the last game on Friday: Surge versus Ultra. Surge plus 1.5 minus 125. Ultra minus 1.5 minus 105. Surge plus 193 on the money line. Ultra minus 275. So this one is a bit challenging. I've got some value. I got Seattle covering the plus 1.5 51% of the time. So there's like maybe a little, well, that's a very tough call. That's basically hovering on no value at all for the spread. And also I've got Toronto winning this about 65% of the time, so it's not really much value on, there's no value on 275 either. This game is just kind of iffy. I'm just gonna leave this alone and just watch a game and just hope to see Toronto crush them. And like I'm a Toronto fan. This Seattle team, I have no idea if we're gonna get good Seattle or bad Seattle. That varies on the day, the weather,
Yeah.
the location, whether or not it's land or not. Like it's extremely variable, and we've called this out repeatedly. And I think we're gonna find out. Like we're gonna see more about this, and that's the thing. It's just insane variability. It's like, hey, our accuracy and Mac gonna have a good series? And if the answer is no, then didn't they lose in winners losers round one to like LAG, or did they lose to LAG, or did they lose to someone or not? I can't remember now.
I think they lost to Mutineers.
Yes, which is actually arguably worse.
Yeah.
Let me find that now. Now that's just gonna bother me.
Because I think it started in winners bracket. They lost
Yes,
to
they
somebody.
lost a phase, and then they barely, okay, that's why they barely beat LAG. They beat LAG 3-2, and then they got beat by Rocker 3-2. That's what it was.
True. Who did Mutineers beat in losers round one? Boston?
Legion,
Legion. Oh
and
yeah,
then they
yeah,
immediately got stomped by Toronto, 3-0.
yeah. Yeah, that's right. Wow, that feels like it was a month ago, but it was just a couple weeks.
Yeah,
I'm with you. Your numbers sound a lot like my numbers. I've got Toronto to win about 69% of the time, to cover a map and a half spread for Toronto 46% of the time. Yeah, I mean, this is priced pretty spot on, and you're absolutely right. Like, Seattle wins this if their other players show up, or if Toronto have one of those days where they just don't have it in search. But you're playing Seattle, who is like the notoriously just hit or miss search team, more misses than hits. Uh, so yeah, I think Toronto takes this probably a 3-1. But I that -1.5 at -105, I don't like it enough. So I think it's going to be a good game, good series, two teams that are going to make champs. Um, but yeah, the price is just too accurate for me to have a strong lean either way. But if you got to make me pick, I'll take Seattle +1.5 at -125. I don't like it. I don't love it. It's just my pick. So yeah.
yeah. It's just I'm leaving this alone. We found some value in the first two games. We're just gonna sit back Friday night, just watch a game. I think no, there's no hockey games. I don't know. Whatever. Just watch a game. Don't need to always have something on it. My model does not. Maybe if the lines move, right? Like if Toronto suddenly it's like +100 to -1.5, then sure, like +110 or something. Yeah, sure, I'll take it. But not at this price. Saturday afternoon, Minnesota versus London. Minnesota -1.5 +120. London +1.5 -155. Minnesota -170 on the money line. London +130. Over 4.5 +160. Under 4.5 -210. So I've got this as Minnesota at about 78% chance to win this, and that's about right. Actually, there'd be some value on the -170. So like I've got this as a 3-1, so there'd be some value on Minnesota -1.5. What have we got for spreads here? Minnesota -18.5. I've got that as about a 45-point hard point win, so there's some value there. Minnesota, for some reason, is an underdog in the search and destroy. That seems wrong. You're getting them even money to win.
What?
You're getting them even money to win the search and destroy. That seems like, have they ever seen London play
No,
search and destroy
I'm
before?
saying what you think Minnesota's favored over Boston in a search.
No, London. They're playing London.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead of the next game. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's right, because
Yes.
they're doing two games.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Minnesota should be favorites over London in a search.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The thing is, maybe the book made the same mistake as you. Because I got nothing. I don't understand how Minnesota could be favored or be an underdog in the search and destroy, and then Minnesota obviously favored in the control as well. Yeah, Minnesota -1.5, not looking too bad. What are your thoughts on this game?
All right, Minnesota London. This is so yeah, this is the first match of the day for another Minnesota home series. This one is in St. Paul, I believe, so a little closer to home for the Rocker fans. Yeah, and if it's anything like the one they had in Madison, Wisconsin, It'll be a 2-0. Now, different opponents, but London fall into that category with LAG and Florida, who were their opponents at the first home series of just one of the worst teams in the game. So good job to Minnesota to get these teams out to play LAN, because if you want to win in front of your home crowd, the easiest way to do that is to play against bad teams. And they're 3 for 3 so far. We'll get to the Boston game a little later, but yeah, again, Minnesota, I've got it a 69% chance to win outright. Slight favorites in hard points, slight favorites in search and destroy, heavy favorites in control. Yeah, I I mean, London could win. It wouldn't shock me at all. But just the fact that Minnesota is on land in front of a home crowd, they were great doing that, when like a month ago or 2 months ago, whenever that was. Uh, yeah, I like Minnesota here. I like the money line actually more than the -1.5. Um, Even though the price difference is, pretty big on that. -170, I see money line versus +120 to cover the map and a half. But I just think that there's a chance that London could come out and take both hard points. In which case you're not winning the -1.5. So yeah, for Minnesota, to me, it feels like a 3-1, but I'd rather just take that money line, ensure that if it gets to a game five, I have the team that I like anyway. Um, so yeah, rocker here for me. Home team, home crowd, easy opponent, an opponent that has no life whatsoever. The London Royal Ravens are last in points. Um, yeah, it's rough for them. I will say it's an ASIM revenge game. Uh, but that's about it. That's all you can say for London at this point. And yeah, I'll take Rocker to win, which is scary because I am a fan of theirs, and it feels like anytime I support them, it all comes crashing down. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I like Rocker quite a bit here.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Okay, moving on to the middle game between Rocker Games on Saturday, because again they're doing that home series thing. Legion versus Subliners. Legion +1.5, +135. Subliners -1.5, -175. Legion +215 on the money line. Subliners -310. Over 4.5, +200. Under 4.5, -275. Yeah, I've got New York has like a 90% chance to win this game, which equates to a -900 money line. Um, the problem is like the -1.5 is like a little too highly priced. Like a 65% chance and a -175 is a bit much there. So like it's not fun. What have we got the hard point at? Because I've got the hard point as spread at about 34, and the spread is 37, so that's a little iffy. Um, yeah, it's just this might just be a stay away. This might be kind of a stay away. It's just the numbers just don't line up well for me. Again, this is the problem, right? Because we're at a point now in the season where a lot of the like we found market efficiencies before, and we've had them a lot, and we still will have our own spots. But the problem is the markets have caught up with a lot of these teams, and they know which teams are good and which ones are bad, right? And that's the problem is we figured it out. Now the market has figured it out, and they're like, hey, where is they're like, we know like this is the thing. Some of the market inefficiencies we took advantage of a couple weeks ago, they seem to be gone. So it's a bit harder to pick your spots. But again, the CDL will be back next year, and we'll have more than enough opportunity to pick our spots then. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm with you on this one too. It feels like a stay away. It's tough. I mean, Vegas does play earlier in the week. They play Optic on Friday, which we both think won't go well for them. So, maybe you could have a buyback opportunity here if the price gets way out of control. Just considering that New York doesn't play before this match. So, yeah, if Vegas come out, get smoked by Optic, which happens to most teams these days, maybe their money line price goes from like +215 to +250 or +275. In that case, maybe it makes sense to go with them there or to cover the map and a half, whatever you'd prefer. But as it sits now, yeah, it doesn't feel like I'm interested in anything here. Obviously, Vegas horrible at control. New York not horrible. I would maybe look at what map gets played at that control, just because Vegas has shown some life on Expo. I believe they've only played it 3 times, but they're 2-1, so that's something. But if New York come out and veto that, I mean, you're going to play on Hotel or El Asilo. New York are pretty good on both those maps, and Vegas have they should just forfeit that map if it comes like if it's control and it's not Expo in your Vegas. Just say, we forfeit that. We'll just go on to map 4 at this point, because why waste our time with that? It's that bad. So maybe a New York like control spread could make sense, but even then the price on that probably isn't going to be great, because the books know that Vegas is also bad. So yeah, not a ton of ways to play this one. Um, New York looked pretty solid at Major 4. We'll see if they can keep that going moving forward. And yeah, Vegas obviously looked really bad. And I mean, you talk about needing these qualifiers more than any other team, and you start out with Optic and New York. That's a tough way to start, but we'll see if Legion can get maybe one win out of those two. But I think, yeah, odds are they're gonna start 0-2, probably like a 2-6 map count, or maybe even 1-6. So not looking good for Vegas, but maybe a buyback opportunity if the price gets way out of whack.
Possibly. Still not in love with it though, but we'll see. Okay, next game up 6 o'clock on Saturday, Minnesota versus Boston. Again, this is still in Minnesota territory, although it doesn't factor into my projections. Minnesota versus Boston. Minnesota plus 1.5 minus 135. Boston minus 1.5 plus 105. Minnesota plus 159 on the money line. Boston minus 220. Over 4.5 plus 165. My model actually weirdly likes Minnesota in this game. Now, again, I don't make per player adjustments, so I don't know the effect of getting rid of Vivid for or replacing Nero with Vivid is. But my model actually kind of does like Minnesota here. I mean, it really did like them, and they got crushed by New York in the major, 3-1. But they kept it kind of close. They actually did pretty well. They took down Seattle. They had a relatively not horrible major. So yeah, I don't hate Minnesota here. I don't know what Boston is doing. They seem to be just making constant changes, and I think I'm going to take Minnesota here, plus 159, plus 160 on the money line. That seems like a pretty good price. Plus 162 on Bet365. Like that's a good price. That's not a bad price at all. Like I'm going to take Minnesota here, and I'm going to be pretty happy with it. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I'm with you again. Also considering that Minnesota play earlier in the day, versus a nice team to warm up against. Yeah, the vibes are probably going to be pretty good for that Rocker team. Home crowd still, second game of the day. Boston's just been sitting, waiting to play this game. So yeah, I don't have Minnesota favored in the game, but if you make those manual adjustments of they play earlier in the day against a much inferior opponent, Boston is not playing anybody until this game, uh, and the crowd is on their side. Obviously, maybe you throw in a little bit of travel for Boston. That might affect him slightly, um, but yeah, I can see this being more of a 50-50 match. And then if that's the case, like, give me Rocker. Their price is just so much better. Either way, you want to play it again, money line versus spread. Again, like in the London series, I prefer Rocker just straight up on the money line here, as opposed to covering the map and a half. Just because Boston, their strength lies in their hard point, I think. Their search is much better than Rockers as well, but a Boston 3-1 is a pretty likely outcome if Minnesota falls flat here. And then one other point I want to make, the whole switching out Vivid in place of Nero. I actually don't mind the process Boston is doing. So I think they're saying, okay, our ARs are good. We're comfortable with Awakening and Beans. That's a very solid AR duo. We have 3 capable SMGs. Let's try every combination of those we can and see which one works for champs. So they've seen Vivid and Nero work pretty well earlier in the year. Then, right, Vivid comes out for Kremp and Nero we just saw. The results weren't quite there for them. And now we're obviously trying the last one with Vivid and Kremp. So I think just based on how that sub duo does and how the team plays this qualifier and this major, they'll make a decision on, okay, this is our starting lineup for champs. And I like that process. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with any of those. We'll see Vivid and Kremp together this weekend, and maybe it's a nightmare for some reason. But either way you go about it, they should have a good team for champs regardless. So yeah, in this case though, again, I'll roll with my Minnesota boys.
Yeah. I I agree. We're on the same page here with Minnesota versus Boston. Last game on Saturday, Toronto versus LA Thieves. Toronto plus 1.5 minus 250. Thieves minus 1.5 plus 185. Toronto even on the money line. Thieves minus 130 over 4.5 plus 155. Under 4.5 minus 205. I've got Thieves 3-1 here. I've got Thieves like 74% chance to win this game. The thing is, the model has like two very clear tiers. Like it's like there's the best teams in the league, and that they're like Optic and Thieves, and then there's like Toronto, FaZe, and then after that, then there's just a giant gap, and then there's the next four below there, and then there's the teams that aren't making champs below that. And this kind of plays into it. Like I've got Thieves, I've got Ultra as a barely better hardpoint team, but then I've got Thieves as a much better search team. Well, I've got Toronto somehow favored in the control, but very close though in the control. But then I've got Thieves favored in the second hard point. Then I got Thieves favored in the search. So maybe my numbers are a little unfair to Toronto, um, but I I don't see a yeah the hard point spread is plus Toronto plus 2.5. What are you gonna do with the plus 2.5 hard point spread? You're like, could you imagine like you're waiting for like the yeah we lost 258 to 250 yeah with this really big sweat there. Um, yeah, Bet365 plus 10.5. What are your thoughts on this game? I don't know if Toronto is bettable here or not. What do you think?
Yeah, I so my numbers do say that Toronto are a slight favorite. Now, if you factor in recent performance, maybe you make it a straight up 50-50, in which case Toronto even money is right where it should be. So if anything, I do lean Toronto here, but not strongly whatsoever. Um, but yeah, I think Toronto proved at Major Four that their qualifier stage was a little fluky. Right? They only go, I believe they went 1-4 in the qualifiers. They started in losers bracket, and they end up making Sunday. I believe they finished third, if I'm not, or no, fourth. Wait. Top six. Hold on, I keep backtracking. I believe they finished top six, right? Because Thieves won, they beat Optic, FaZe finished third, and I want to say New York was fourth. Okay, so I'm just backtracking here a little bit. Toronto did get 2 wins at least out of the weekend before dropping, so good on them. Um, yeah, I just kind of want to avoid this. Like, this is going to be a heck of a match. Um, it's close to a 50-50. That's what's indicated in the price. I would just leave it alone. I mean, could the number move much before we get here? Toronto plays Seattle on Friday. Thieves, uh, they don't play again until Sunday. So this will be Thieves first, Toronto second. So, that might be something interesting if Toronto get a good reps against Surge. Maybe this price shifts a little bit, one way or the other. Or if Surge come out and beat Toronto, I suppose Toronto's odds could get even better. Um, so that might be the way I try to play it, even though I kind of like Toronto just to win against Surge. Like, if on the off chance that Surge comes out and beats Toronto, which is very possible, maybe the Toronto price for this game goes to plus 120, something like that, um, which could be appealing to me at that time. But as it sits now, I think the price is pretty accurate. So I'll just stay away for this now. But I think so far of all the matches we talked about, best one of the weekend so far. But we've got some more on Sunday that catch my eye. So we'll get to those in a bit.
Yeah. So I mean that's going to be a hell of a game there on Saturday night. So Yeah. Moving on to Sunday. Florida versus LAG. Florida minus 1.5 plus 125. Florida with expectations. LAG
Mhm.
plus 1.5 minus 165. Florida minus 185 on the money line. LAG plus 134. Over 4.5 plus 160. Under 4.5 minus 210. So Florida walks into this game with expectations. I have them a bare favorite, 53 to 47. That's not particularly encouraging. I've got this going to a game five almost 40% of the time. It's just gross. Just don't do it, guys. It's not worth it. Um, I have the spread as for the hard point. I have the hard point spread is 30. Um, but like the LAG plus 18.5 isn't horrible. Yeah, Florida with expectations. What could go wrong, right? What could possibly
Yeah,
go wrong? What do you think?
I I agree with you again. It's weird. Kind of liking LAG in both of their games. But that's where we are this week. Yeah, I mean Florida won a game at Major 5 or Major 4, I should say. And now they're all of a sudden minus 185 to a team that's not that much worse than them, I don't think. So, um yeah, I don't love LAG. I'm not gonna do anything with this game, but if you're gonna make me pick a side, like yeah, I would just take LAG. Um, eh, I don't know about money line versus spread here, whichever you'd prefer, but this is really not a game I'm interested in. It probably won't mean much in the long term. Um, I mean, these teams are 10th and 11th in points, so it's important for them, but in the grand scheme of things, this game doesn't mean a ton. So I'm just gonna stay away and see if yeah Florida can win as a minus 185 favorite. Because do they deserve to be that high? I kind of think no. But yeah, when I mentioned earlier there are some nicer games coming ahead on Sunday, I wasn't talking about this one. I was actually talking about these next two. So we'll get to those.
Yes. All right. Next game, second last game of the weekend. Phase versus Optic. Classic. The actually, I mean, this isn't El Clasico because El Clasico was um basically
Optic
the
versus Envy.
yeah the Optic versus Envy. So that was basically Optic versus Dallas. So that's not the case anymore. But this is still another one of the top tier matchups in CDL. Phase plus 1.5 minus 190. Optic minus 1.5 plus 145. Phase plus 103 on the money line. Optic minus 135. Over 4.5 plus 155. Under 4.5 minus 205. Give me Optic here. For some reason, this Optic team has this team number, and I don't know. The thing is, when you start seeing something so often in the CDL, you almost wonder if it's built like that advantage is just built into the map pool, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where they're playing. It just seems like Optic. And to be honest, I'm almost thinks Optic is just a far better team. To be honest with you. So I've got Optic 3-1. I've got them covering the minus 1.5 67% of the time. So huge value on the minus 1.5 at plus 145. And yeah, I've got them as Optic as massive favorites in the hard point, favorites in the search as well. Um, just,
Wow.
okay, the spread is 26. I've got Optic as like 70-ish, 65 point favorites. No,
I
yes,
meant I meant in the search. You have Optic favored in the search.
yeah, I got them favorite 6-4.
Wow. All right. Yeah, and then yeah, I would like Optic too if I was in that boat. I see a phase team that's 40 and 14 in S&D on the year. Granted, it's been not as hot lately, still very good, but I mean 40 and 14. Optic also a good search team. They're 27 and 22. Better than that lately, but I will say with Optic, I do think of all the teams that were affected by the meta change with taking out Fortress control in place of Expo control, they gained the most out of any team. They were horrible on Fortress. Um, and on Expo, I believe they're 2-2. Yes, 2-2 on Expo, which isn't great. Like they're dead even on every map. They're 2-2 on that, 8-8 on Hotel, 7-7 on El Asilo. Atlanta already didn't like Fortress Control, but they've played Expo twice and they've lost both of them. So yeah, maybe a slight advantage if that's the control map for Optic, but I I I know it sounds crazy, but I still have FaZe favored despite the head-to-head matchup, history between these two teams. I do think in the long run that ends up correcting itself. I did see a meme like last week, or I think as Major 4 was unfolding, that like it's rock paper scissors between FaZe, Optic, and Thieves for whatever reason. I think it's probably just coincidence, but you're right. Optic has FaZe's number right now, so maybe I shouldn't have them as underdogs. But yeah, Optic beat FaZe, FaZe beat Thieves, Thieves beat Optic. It's that circle. That's just how it's gone this year. And for the most part, like if you want to backtrack a year or two, that's kind of how it's been too. So weird things happen. I do think FaZe eventually bucks that trend. It's just not every day you get a FaZe team at plus anything versus somebody else. I get it. It's totally justified for Optic, but this sounds like the one game where we'll disagree, Robert, because I'll take FaZe. I just think their Search and Destroy is still so good that if it gets to a game 5, I expect FaZe to win. Granted, that probably means they got to win game 2, but can they win a hard point versus Optic? I think they can. I think they're underdogs in both, but you also have control to get back to, which they could win as well. So to me, it's the difference in search that is the key for FaZe. Um, but if Optic come out and just dominate in hardpoint, and if the meta change is still working in their favor, which it very well could, Optic could absolutely win this. And if they do, I think it's quick. I think it's probably a 3-1. So you can justify the -1.5 like that. And if Optic, for whatever reason, just come out and have FaZe figured out in Search and Destroy, or can expand their map pool even slightly, then it gets really, really scary for them. So, um, yeah, I don't mind going either way with this. I am on the FaZe side. I don't know if I like it enough to take it, but this is definitely a must watch because this will be the best, probably the best qualifier match this week, next week, and the week after.
Yeah, I think this will be a very good match. I completely agree with that. Last match of the weekend: Subliners versus Thieves. Subliners +1.5 -200. Thieves -1.5 +150. Subliners +125 on the money line. Thieves -165. Over 4.5 +155. Under 4.5 -205. I've got Thieves as like a 78% favorite here. Give me the -1.5. The model loves Thieves. I don't know why. The model also doesn't particularly love New York, except when they're playing Las Vegas apparently. But no, like the model thinks subliners are like a tier 3 team. When tier 1 is the top two teams, tier 2 is the next two teams, and then tier 3 is the remaining teams win a champs, and then everybody else is below that. The model likes them, and I think it's well deserved. Like, I mean, they won the major in a pretty dominant fashion too. I mean, they took out Optic in the winners finals pretty dominantly, and they cleaned Optic up in, I believe, 6 games. So like it was a really good, like, this team is just dominant, and I don't think the Subliners team can compete with them. I think that the Subliners team is not good enough, is not as good as this Thieves team. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm mostly in agreement there. It's tricky, right? I have New York as a 45% chance to win, LA Thieves at a 55% chance. So I do like Thieves to win, and I do think those numbers are maybe a tad bit low considering how Thieves have looked lately. Um, and when you consider like this is just the time of the year where LA Thieves turn it up a notch. Like for whatever reason, when the game is mostly figured out, the meta is figured out, like Thieves know how to play. Early in the year, right? A little shaky, still some things to iron out. And that's another cause of concern, right? Like New York, they were at their best at Major 1. They won Major 1. They looked dominant. They didn't drop a map, right? The meta's still very much in flux a month or two after the game releases. Now that we're in May, everyone knows how to play the game. Like there's no I mean, there's strategy to everything you do, but you've had so many reps. You know how to play all these different situations. And when that becomes the meta, LA Thieves just know how to get it done. So, yeah, I think it's justifiable having Thieves as a very heavy favorite. This will be another stay away for me. I'll wait and see. Does the price move at all in one direction or the other? Um, we'll see. New York does play Vegas the day before. A match that I think they should take care of business in, but that's TBD. And obviously, Thieves play the day before versus Toronto. So if Toronto can come out and give them, a tough series on Saturday, and New York take care of business versus Legion, like I think in that scenario, you could get a better Thieves number actually. So I know you like them now. I would maybe wait if it dropped. The tough thing is, right, Thieves money comes in very fast. Like, so we'll see if it even drops that much if the games end up going like that. But um yeah, another heck of a matchup. Thieves should win, but Subliners did just show up at Major 4, top 4 finish. Um and yeah, they answered a lot of questions people had from Major 2, Major 3, both pretty shaky. But yeah, last major was good to see from the Subliners because I think they needed to prove to everybody that, like, hey, we're still here, we belong. Um, and I do think I would throw them in the tier with Thieves, with Toronto. Um, I don't know if you'd throw Seattle in that tier, but like they're very, very good, and either of these teams could win on any given day. So uh, that's where I'll leave it. But if you're gonna make me pick, I'll take New York plus 125. I don't love it, but I don't know. I gotta pick some, so I'll go the other way once again, just so we're not in such agreement on all these games.
All right, that's it. That is it for this week. We will see you guys next week with week 2 of the qualifiers, the second last week of the regular season. And yeah, until then, enjoy the weekend. Some good games this weekend, and yeah, we will see you guys next week. Have a good week, everybody.